Please can you commence the broadcast and confirm?
I confirm the broadcast has started.
Lovely, thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Partnership Development Scrutiny Committee. Before we commence with this evening's proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some decision making. Sorry, I do apologise. I can confirm the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for this meeting. Please only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the Chairman know you wish to speak through the chat function. The Chairman will introduce the speakers in the order at which the request to speak has been made, unless there is a point of order at which we will give way. Please minimise all distractions while you're in the meeting. Members are asked to mute your microphone when you're not speaking and to consider turning off your video feed if you have interference. Please bear in mind that there is a lag between speaking and other attendees hearing you. There is no presentations this evening, so all participation will be via the video feed. When referring to the officer's report, please quote any relevant page and paragraph number. There's no private business for this evening. However, if it is necessary to move into private session, please make sure that your connection and venue is private. If members lose connection to this meeting at any point, please rejoin the meeting and we will readmit you. Please use the chat function for the purpose described to request to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the access to information regimes of FOI, EIR. It is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation and Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified with a prefix of CLLR before their name. Officers in attendance are identified with officer. There is a minute taker for this meeting and one meeting facilitator. I can confirm that this meeting is quorum and may proceed. I can also confirm that this meeting of the Partnership Development Scrutiny Committee is a non-decision making committee this evening, and the committee consists of the following members. The Chairman is Mary Cunningham, the Vice Chairman is Councillor Courthold, the remaining members are John Ball, Andrew Hensman, Trevor McArdle, Jackie Pell, Jenny Sandham, Paul Thorogood and Lynn Walters. Chairman, we have no apologies for absence and all members are in attendance, and we have 2 officers in attendance in addition to the minute taker and a meeting facilitator. These are Tracy Parry, Community Safety Manager, and Sherry Root, Corporate Director. Thank you very much, Chairman. I now hand the meeting over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by welcoming you all to this virtual meeting of the Partnership Development Group Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Mary Cunningham and I am the Chairman of this committee. For this meeting, I'm being assisted by a governance officer and a meeting facilitator who will help me to identify when people want to speak and manage the notifications through the chat function. I obviously can't see all of you, so please let me know using the chat function if there are any issues with your internet connection. Please also remember to mute your microphones when you finish speaking. Members, please can I remind you that tonight's committee is a non-decision making meeting, but when I require your agreement, silence will be taken as assent. As the meeting facilitator has confirmed the attendance of members and officers for this meeting, I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. Just before I do that, I believe we have a new member tonight who's most welcome, Councillor Mrs. Walters. I'll now move on to agenda item 1. We have apologies for absence. We have no apologies, that's been indicated. So I will move to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. Please indicate you wish to speak in the chat function. We don't appear to have any declarations of interest, so I will proceed to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting.
Excuse me, Chairman, I do apologise for interrupting. We've just had a message from Councillor Sandham. She's having a problem connecting this evening, so she's just going to try and rejoin through another computer. So when she does rejoin, Chairman, with your permission, could we just check her connection, please?
Shall I proceed until then, Emma?
Please do. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Members, for this item, I will be seeking your agreement, therefore silence will be assent. However, if a member wishes to raise an issue in respect of the minutes, please indicate via the chat function. Do members have any objection to the approval of the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting held on the 12th of May 2021? Thank you, members. Your silence is agreement that the minutes are an accurate record. Thank you, members. We now proceed to item 4, public question time. Agenda item 4, public question time. Members, there are no registered speakers for this evening's public question time, so I will proceed to item 5, annual report of the Braintree District Community Safety Partnership 2021. Now, agenda item 5, annual report of the Braintree District Community Safety Partnership 2021. Members, we have Tracy Parry, Community Services Manager at the Council, in attendance this evening in order to provide the committee with the annual report of the Braintree District Community Safety Partnership. Tracy will also provide further information as to the Council's role as a member of the Community Safety Partnership in order to assist with the committee's information gathering for the scrutiny review into enforcement procedures at the Council. In a moment, I will ask Tracy to introduce herself and to provide her report. I will invite members to ask their questions of Tracy following the report if she is happy with this approach. Can I remind members, before Tracy presents her report, that Tracy can't answer on specific police or fire or any individual partnership matter. So if I could now welcome Tracy. Thank you for taking the time to attend this evening. Could I please ask you to introduce yourself to the committee and begin with your report?
Chairman, I do apologise for interrupting, but we do have Councillor Sandham back in the meeting. Could we just check her connection? Councillor Sandham, could you unmute and test, please?
Yep. Is that working now?
It is. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Sandham. Thank you, Chairman, and apologies, Tracy, for interrupting. Thank you.
No worries, Emma. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, members. I'm Tracy Parry. I'm the Community Services Manager at the Council. So the report this evening is just to provide an overview of the work of the Braintree District Community Safety Partnership during 2020-2021. What I thought I would start with, because I'm aware that there are some members here this evening that may have not been at Scrutiny Committee before when I've spoken. So I just thought I would sort of set some scenes around community safety partnerships in general. So the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998 placed a joint responsibility on a range of specific agencies to develop strategies to protect communities from crime and help people feel safe. And our community safety partnership is made up of representatives from Braintree District Council, Essex Police, Essex Fire and Rescue Service, Essex Community Rehabilitation Company. Now, that company is who deal with the more low-level offenders, and then the National Probation Service, which deal with your more high-risk offenders. Mid-Essex CCG, Essex County Council, and that is the partnership lead for children and young people and through secondary education. Our local CVS, which is Community 360, and Eastlight Community Homes. One of the statutory requirements for CSPs is to carry out an annual strategic assessment, and this basically collates a range of stats and data and helps us complete a risk matrix, which then is used to inform findings and gives us recommendations for our priorities moving forward. So for 2021, our priorities were tackling the trafficking of drugs in the community, increasing confidence in identifying and reporting hidden harms, and driving down violence and disorder within the community. Now, both the strategic assessment and the priorities are agreed by the Responsible Authority Group, which is our strategic group of the CSP. Once that is agreed, then we will formulate an action plan for the year ahead. So as you will no doubt appreciate, last year was unprecedented due to the COVID pandemic, which meant that unfortunately a lot of our community safety partners had to concentrate their time on dealing with issues relating to the pandemic. So unfortunately we were unable to deliver as much of our normal activity than what we probably would in normal times. But I just thought I would take you through some of the key achievements from last year. So we formulated a local exploitation group. One of the things that became apparent quite quickly, because young people weren't necessarily in school, the numbers of exploitation cases increased quite considerably for the Braintree district, and that could be from a child sexual exploitation point of view or a criminal exploitation point of view. And whereas before it would have been exploitation out in the community, it obviously went online exploitation. So one of the meetings that we attend as a CSP is a meeting called MACE, which is the Mid-Essex Missing and Child Exploited meeting. They've all got lovely long names. And it became apparent quite quickly that the number of cases at that Mid-Essex meeting for Braintree was increasing quite considerably. So we decided to formulate a local group with a range of partners, so with Children's Social Care, Family Solutions, Essex Police, and sort of CVS organisations such as the Children's Society, to try and understand whether there were hotspots in the district, what type of exploitation it was, and how we could work collectively to support some of these young people, identify them, and sort of try and get them away from being exploited, or try and work with the police to identify the perpetrators. It was quite a slow process to start with, but actually moving into this year, it has been really successful, and we've managed to start working on some specific projects with particular groups of young people from across the district that have been identified as being exploited. Mobile cameras to tackle crime and nuisance. And I think probably members, the next two achievements within my report will be able to support your evidence in relation to enforcement. So as a partnership, we have continued to fund mobile cameras. We've got a pool of about 10, I think now, but we funded 4 last year. And basically what we do is working with the enforcement team at the council and with Essex Police and with our housing associations, who all have a responsibility to deal with ASB. We have deployed them to areas where we felt there was a need, and not just around ASB. It could have been around intelligence around the dealing of drugs, all sorts of things. So they're installed by the street scene enforcement team, and obviously we've been able to use that evidence to feed into the police around disruption around the gangs and the drug dealing, but also around identifying prolific shoplifters, and obviously from an ASB point of view. But it's also enabled us to use that evidence when we're looking at the enforcement that we can use against people. So under the ASB legislation, most of the powers within that legislation can either be used by the local authority or by Essex Police. So I think in partnership, we've been really successful in serving community protection notices. The police have served a number of criminal behaviour orders on people, but also closure orders. So where we've had a particular individual in a particular property whose behaviour or the people that are entering that property are having a detrimental impact on the community, then we can potentially seek a closure notice, then followed by an order to either allow the individual to remain at the property, but not to allow anybody else into the property, or in the case of an order, then that person would have to be completely removed from that property to deal with the issue. And then moving on to the Community Safety Hub. So this is the operational arm of the CSP. Prior to the pandemic, we were meeting at Causeway House on a 2-weekly basis. Since the pandemic, we meet virtually, and it's still been working really, really well. It's been on a monthly basis, and we have a variety of partners. The distribution list is currently standing at about 35, 38 different partners. Don't necessarily all come along at the same time, but we've got a number of housing associations, we have social care, we have the community and voluntary sector, we have the mental health team, and basically, we have standing agenda items. So we talk about the CSP action plan. We have different organisations coming and talking about different projects and initiatives that may be available to the Braintree district. We talk about things around the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's plan and talk about any crime trends and patterns. But then also there is an opportunity for individual organisations to put forward specific cases to discuss. These may be individuals, they may be hotspot areas, and it gives partners the opportunity to share information. So we do have a very robust information sharing agreement, but it enables us to talk about these cases and come up with multi-agency responses. And what we found this year is there has been a high number of complex cases. I think sometimes when we're dealing with antisocial behaviour, yes, the behaviour is having a detrimental impact on the community, but actually we look at that individual that's causing that behaviour and are there any other issues? And I would say 9 times out of 10, there are issues around that person's mental health. They may be a victim of domestic abuse. They may be a drug and alcohol dependent. So it's just enabled us to have then some separate professional meetings where, whilst before we may have gone straight down the enforcement route, what we've tried to do is see if there is any other support that we can put in place for that individual that could potentially eradicate their behaviour. Now, the issue with that is obviously as adults, you can't enforce people to engage with those types of services. So I think what we've tried to do collectively is look at whether those routes are possible around getting somebody into drug and alcohol treatment or into mental health services. And if they don't engage, then we will look to go down the enforcement route. So I think during the last year and a half, the partners have really come together and worked differently. Whilst enforcement definitely has its place, I do think because of the complex issues that some of our residents have, it has enabled us to sort of look at things slightly differently. And then lastly, from our achievements, we had quite early on again last year a spike in the use of nitrous oxide. We were getting a number of reports. People were sending us photos of different areas across the district where numerous amounts of these canisters were being found. So what we basically did was, because some schools were in, some were out, but we provided some information to the education settings. We put a lot of information out on social media and through the partners, because whilst the use of nitrous oxide isn't illegal, the selling of nitrous oxide, dealing of it is. So we tried to sort of put that message across, but also the health and well-being message. So as I said, unfortunately, there's probably not as much to report on as I would like. But from the partnership point of view, our funding comes from the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. Excuse me. We have an allocated budget of £17,739. That's worked out on a formula at the PFCC's office. And due to COVID and us being unable to do some of the activity we would normally do, we have sought authorisation and carry forward some of our funding from last year. So we do have a new action plan in place, which I'm sure I will be back next year to talk about. But other than that, I think that is it. Thank you, members.
Chairman, you're currently muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Tracy. Members, can I now invite you to ask your questions of Tracy? When asking your questions in relation to the annual report, please can I remind you that this session also functions as an evidence gathering opportunity for the scrutiny review. Therefore, please bear the terms of reference for the scrutiny review in mind as well. Please indicate in the chat function if you wish to speak. And can I just ask members that they don't relate to specific cases? We are being recorded, so we have to be a little bit careful. Thank you. So, do we have any members who have registered in the chat function? Oh, I saw, well, I saw a hand go up pretty quickly. Councillor Mrs. Walters, do you want to start first? Then I saw Councillor McArdle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Tracy, can you tell me again what those those, is it nitrate, what were those nitrate containers? You're on Zoom, you're on silent.
Sorry. There's sort of nitrous oxide. It is the little silver canisters.
I've seen so many of those, and that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Where I live at Marks Farm, I don't know what I was doing actually. I was clearing some rubbish out of the way, and I found there was just behind the supermarket in the bushes, there were dozens of these little canisters. Where do people get them from? Or am I being very naive?
The internet, online.
Okay, fine. Yeah, clearly. Thank you for that. Okay, thanks very much.
But I think, Councillor Walters, if you are seeing huge amounts of them, if you could take a picture and send it in, that would be really useful, because I think, you know, our social media campaigns, we can do them again. And I think, you know, we are in summer holidays, and I don't wish to say that it is just young people that are using them, but there's no reason why, if we feel that we're starting to see more discarded canisters, that we couldn't do our campaign again.
I will just say, Tracy, that it wasn't in recent months that I saw them. So I don't want to mislead you in thinking that we've got a massive pandemic, another pandemic of some description. So I just thought I just wanted to clarify what these cylinders were, but thank you for making that clear to me.
Thank you. Now, Councillor McArdle.
Thank you, Chair. I've got to thank you, Tracy, for your report. That was very interesting. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, those offers of support to people who can often be vulnerable people, to mental health service and addiction services, you don't know what the take-up might have been. That's my first question. And the second one is, how would we know the strategy had been successful compared to other areas? Thank you.
Okay, so we can make, obviously, referrals to drug and alcohol services and other services. Now, from a mental health point of view, patient confidentiality comes into play, so we wouldn't get any information back from our mental health services. Our drug and alcohol services, we can, and last year we had a project called Horizons, which was funded by DWP, and that's still running. It's funded through different means now. So we get regular information on engagement from people that are part of that project. And in relation to your second question, can you repeat that one, please, Councillor McArdle?
Yes, it's how would we know the strategy that we have in Braintree is successful and compared to other areas? So what would be the measure of success? Because you've certainly mentioned some areas where some really positive things are happening, especially with the protection, the behaviour orders, the closure notices, etc. And I just wanted to get an idea of how that might be compared to other areas. I mean, I know it's difficult to make a contrast for Chelmsford and Colchester. They're very different, aren't they? Our neighbouring areas. But could you give any sort of indication, Tracy?
It's probably something I could find out, Councillor McArdle, to be honest. It's not something we necessarily compare.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could, just to get some sort of benchmark, because until you compare to other areas, you're not sure. But it's a very positive report that you've given, and you've been able to demonstrate some of those positive outcomes. So yes, please, thank you.
Chairman, I do believe that Sherry wishes to contribute to this point, please.
Thank you.
So just to answer Councillor McArdle's questions, there are a number of different ways that we understand what success is. You're absolutely right in that it's very difficult to compare one district with another, and that's because you've got completely different issues in different districts, and in some ways they're not comparable. However, we regularly review crime statistics with the local district commander and the local community policing team. So they're reported to us on a regular basis. And you will now, as members, get updates from the police on a weekly basis. So we can see trends over an amount of time, as opposed to in comparison to other districts, but the police do that. We also have the perception ratings, so they are provided to us again by the police on a regular basis, and we provide as part of the questionnaire and survey that we send out to our residents as well. We ask questions about keeping safe and well, so we look at the ratings around that. It's a little bit more subjective how we compare with ourselves in terms of a CSP as opposed to pure police and crime stats between one authority to another authority or area in terms of CSP area. But Tracy meets with her partners, so other district authorities on a regular basis as community safety partners, and so they meet in a network. We also attend Safer Essex Partnership, and there is elected representation from this council on the on the Essex Police, Fire and Crime panel. That is now Councillor Ritchie that attends on behalf of us on there. And so again, those more strategic issues are discussed at that level. And then if there is any kind of spikes in any particular area, then they will be discussed and responded to. So hopefully that gives you an idea that so it isn't kind of at one point, it's a regular thing, and we probably do more around looking at trends over time than we do comparing ourselves from one area to another. The other bit that we do is share best practice. So as part of Tracy's community safety network, and as part of Safer Essex, we look at case studies of things that have worked well and have had an impact in a particular community, and seek to share that best practice, and look to adapt and tailor that to other community safety partnerships. So hopefully that helps. Tracy will tell me if I've got any of that wrong. But I hope it should give you an idea and some reassurance that we do some comparisons.
Thank you. Now I have Councillor Ball next to speak.
Thanks very much, Madam Chairman. Yes, a couple of questions for Tracy. Without wishing to get too far into criminal profiling, is there any particular kind of property that is generally involved where you have problems occurring within properties, perhaps with different residents? And the second one was particularly, I suppose, with young people, but also in general, is the team on its modest budget able to try to put people on a different path, on a long-term basis?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ball. I think no is the answer to the first question. It's not a specific type of property. We have issues, if I use ASB as an example, we will have ASB issues with housing association tenants, we'll have sheltered housing accommodation, we could have private, so there's not a type as such of property. And I think as well with antisocial behaviour in particular, and it may have come up in your partnership discussion around enforcement, is it's perception versus reality as well with ASB, as to actually whether it is ASB or whether it's a case that two households just don't get on with each other. In relation to your second question, yes, it is a modest budget, but I think because it is a partnership, and particularly around young people, We've got very good links with the secondary schools through the Behaviour and Attendance Partnership. And we use other organisations such as Essex Youth Service and the Children's Society, so other partners, and they already have their own funding to deliver some activities. So it may be that we can top up some funding and work together on that. So whilst the budget does seem quite modest, we are able to, with our partners who've also got their own separate budgets, to put programs in place. And with the schools as well. So the secondary schools this year, or should I say last year, also got some funding directly from the PFCC's violence and vulnerability budget directly to do some work with children and young people. The fire service offer a whole range of different activities that are funded directly from them. So I think we're able to add value or top up, or just work alongside and not put any money into some of the projects because they're already funded.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, requesting to speak, Councillor Courthold.
Thank you. Tracy, this is quite a complicated question, but I'll try and make it simple as possible. I know we're not supposed to talk about specific incidents, but what I was going to ask about was how you prioritise not just who addresses an incident, but whether an incident should be addressed. The reason I mention that is that the 4 wards I represent all have very rural bits, and in the last few years have been 3 things that the drug taking seems to terrify people, and there was an incident. There was a sort of gang of children. They seem to me to be children, but they were selling things in little plastic bags with dragons on them, and frightening people. And there was lots of sort of light in the dark and shrieks and shouting. And it did eventually stop when they all beat each other up. But the police were approached and nothing really happened. But also, I'm sorry, my clocks are all about to go off, so I might have to throw a ball in. There were people riding motorbikes on the footpaths, and the police were told over and over again, and nothing happened. And then there was a series of bonfires, some of which caused really quite serious damage, to the extent that Earls Colne and Coney Gang got a special constable, which cost them, the parish council's paying for him. He seems a terribly nice guy. But he's obviously, it's quite hard for him to be on the spot when things happen. So do you think that those, let's say, a gang of young people selling stuff in a gasworks, for instance, in the middle of nowhere, or 7 or 8 people on motorbikes racing down footpaths over and over again, day after day, is that the sort of thing that you could address? Should, for instance, when my constituents contact me, should I say, I'll call Tracy rather than call the police? And if I were to call you, or I were to contact you, how do we work out which partnership addresses the issue? I'm sorry, it is a very complicated question, I know, but I'm relating it to my councillorship, if you see what I mean.
Okay. Yep, no worries. So I think in any case where somebody feels that a crime has been committed, you should always be calling Essex Police. So they are people that deal with crime. So, and I suppose from the second point of view, if residents do not feel that Essex Police have dealt with something, then they still need to go through Essex Police from a complaints point of view. I think where it would come to the partnership and through whatever route. So, for example, if I use ASB, so antisocial behaviour can be dealt with by Essex Police, it can be dealt with by us as the local authority, but it can also be dealt with by a housing association. So if it's a housing association tenant that's causing the ASB, then it can be reported in there. But I would always say from a crime point of view, you would go through Essex Police. So from the partnership point of view, we have had cases where information has been provided to us. So I think in the case of your bonfires and other nuisance, that can be reported in as ASB, and then it will be picked up by either the enforcement team or the environmental health team from a bonfires point of view or noise point of view. And then I think if a lot of the time what we try and do, if we find that information, we will speak with our police colleagues, or if we're getting lots of reports, it will then become an agenda item on the hub, and then we'll have a discussion to see what has happened, what hasn't happened, and what potentially we can do together moving forward. Because I think what you've described, Councillor Courthold, is a mixture of stuff. There is some crime there, undoubtedly, but there is also some antisocial behaviour. But in any instance around crime, we always say phone the police, not Tracy Parry.
Thank you. I mean, what a lot of these people had said to me when these things weren't being addressed is, oh, because we're not Braintree, because we're not a town, we're being ignored, which is not a priority. And it would be useful for me if I could say, well, I have another string to my bow. We'll get Tracy on the job. But obviously, if something is a crime, I mean, the trouble is, as you said about the little canisters, if you hear noise at night and you hear shouting and revving engines, and then in the morning you see massive little packets of stuff, empty packets or whatever. I mean, you missed the crime, but I suppose one can send a photograph into police. The very rural people feel a bit sort of neglected, I suppose.
Okay. I mean, I'm quite happy. I mean, members have in the past and still do send me emails about issues, which I'm quite happy to liaise with Essex Police on. But from a rural point of view, Essex Police do have a rural engagement team as well. I don't know where they are and where they're based, but I think I am quite happy for members to email me with information and concerns. I think the caveat to that is obviously I can request information from other partners, but then there will be stuff that I can't necessarily share back.
Right, of course.
Because it could be part of a bigger picture.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We haven't got anybody else registered to ask a question. So I've got a couple, Tracy, if I may go in. But firstly, I think that's very useful, that if we take a photo of these nitrous oxide, I actually saw some, I think just last week, quite a number in one place, which I don't know, does that signify there's quite a few of them together taking it? So if we take a photo, forward it to you with where we've seen it. Lovely, that's very helpful. My questions, you've half answered one, somebody else asked, around the Horizon project. I know the funding was originally for 12 months, and I think you said that you have now got further funding. And the report says up to 10 clients, I believe, had received support. The new funding, will that be to continue their support, or is that for helping new members of the public with issues coming forward?
Okay, so the funding, the new funding, so it will continue to work with the existing cohort. And I understand at the moment we've probably got 7 on our cohort, so there are room for 3 more. So no, we don't kick anybody off, right. Just because it's a different funder. The criteria and the sort of the ethos behind the project remains the same. So and some people drop off because they don't engage. Some people get to the point where so it's Phoenix Futures that run the Horizons project, and they run a number of other services. So they're commissioned to do alcohol services and various other services in Braintree as well. So sometimes there gets to a point where an individual is engaging consistently, is going to their different appointments. So they will then step them down as well into a sort of not a more lower level intervention where they don't need such intensive support as Horizon. So it's quite fluid, but no, we don't kick anybody off, but we can't go over the 10.
Right, that was that once the funding had gone, were they just left to their own devices? But no, they're supported. Thank you. Then my second question, do you see any scope for further partnerships to be included in the community partnership? And if so, what other partnerships could be involved?
One of the things we're quite keen on is how we get some more of our community and voluntary sector partners involved. You know, we've got some, obviously we've got Community 360, we've got Phoenix Futures and the Children's Society, which are quite big CVS organisations, and some of them are county-wide organisations. So I think there's a drive on working with Community 360 to try and get some more local CVS organisations involved. So we're quite fortunate we've got First Stop up the road, which I'm sure members have all heard of, and the fantastic work that they do around a range of things. So I think from a CVS point of view, or voluntary community sector point of view, adult social care is one. We need to get back round the table. That's dropped off. But other than that, I think, and I have to say, I mean, the hub has been around now probably for 3, maybe 4 years. And it's taken a long while to get to where we are. And we did struggle, I think I probably said last time, with mental health. But we've got really good buy-in now with mental health. And, you know, through some of the funding that's come in via housing, there are specific officers that are working with housing, but also feed into the community safety partnership. So I think, you know, and I think Councillor Courthold asked about comparisons to other areas. I think when I talk to colleagues across the county, I think we're probably very successful in the amount of different partners we've got at our hub. And maybe some of the smaller housing associations, but obviously it's difficult for them because the officers might be regionally based, even though they've got some properties in the district. They may not have as many as your East Lights and your Swan Housing type of thing. But we're always open to different partners coming along. But I think at the moment, we probably have got most bases covered, if I'm honest.
Good, good. And I think my final question, you're obviously heavily involved in the Community Safety Partnership. Do you see a situation where further enforcement could be carried out? And if so, and if there is a case where enforcement could be further carried out, do you see anything as a barrier to it?
I think we're in a much better place around enforcement, both internally and with partners. I think because ASB, noise nuisance, community safety crosses over quite a lot, and whilst we all sit in different departments, I think we've now got a protocol that we put in place. So we each know who deals with what, but we also work very closely together. And I think with the housing associations, particularly with East Light, we've also got a protocol in place with them. Again, I think some of the barriers are again around the smaller housing associations, and you know, the amount of officers that they've got to deal with some ASB cases, and you know, the resource they've got to be able to come to local meetings makes it a little bit difficult. But I honestly believe we're in a better place than what we were. But I'm also an advocate of enforcement's not necessarily always the best option, which I think I mentioned earlier. You know, there are cases where it is, you know, pure ASB and nuisance, and enforcement is definitely the right route to go down initially. But there are also lots and lots of cases where actually there's more to it than just antisocial behaviour. And I think that's where working together and having that open communication with partners allows us to gather the background and a bit of history around some of these people, so that we can sort of try and put the best things in place to alleviate the issues.
Thank you, Tracy. I haven't got anyone else registered to speak. Would anybody else like to ask Tracy any further questions? No? Right, thank you, members, and thank you, Tracy. I'm most grateful, I'm sure everybody else is, for your attendance.
Sorry, Chairman, to interrupt. You've got Councillor McArdle indicating.
Yep, Councillor McArdle, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered about, I think the priority for 2020-21 was spot on, especially with the trafficking of drugs in the community. It soon came to my attention that people were very concerned, certainly in Bock in Blackwater, where they were witnessing drug dealing going on quite openly during the daytime. I just wondered if that's likely to continue, because I feel very strongly that that should be something that's top of the list. Thank you.
Yeah, we've decided to keep our priorities the same for this year. Strategic assessment data showed us that, but I think because of the pandemic and because we weren't able to deliver as much work against them priorities as we would normally, we've kept the priorities exactly the same.
That's great, thank you.
Before we bring this to a close, do any members have any further questions that they would like to ask of Tracy? Oh, Councillor Hensman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just thought of something, which is there's a lot of agencies doing very similar roles, and it's almost like you want a one-stop shop that, whether it's the police, whether it's CSP, whether it's social services, whether it's the CQC or whatever, it's very difficult to know which agency or agencies you'd need to go to, and it would be far easier if there was like a one-stop, create a hotline or something like that, and then it's triaged and you're guided to whoever actually needs to know. And I agree with likes of what Trevor says, because I saw somebody openly doing drugs, and I called the police, and unfortunately, as the lady said, by the time they got to me, the stars didn't align up, and the people got away before they could even get there, because they just didn't have the resources in the town at the time.
I think I would always suggest, Councillor Hensman, whilst obviously you've called the police, and I appreciate they didn't necessarily come at the time of the incident, that intelligence is useful to Essex Police because it could be part of a bigger picture. So I think any information like that that you can give to Essex Police is helpful.
Yeah, I do get that, because they do say it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and that little tiny piece that I give them is the final bit that they need to piece it all together, because they don't know where they've come from, that sort of thing. Yeah. But it's just frustrating where it is blatant, and it's either you don't know who to go to, or is it them? I know drugs obviously are, but in other things, say in a care setting, for example, is it them? Is it CQC? Is it social services? Is it even yourselves as community safety, that sort of thing? So it's just, I think it might be something worth exploring, in that whichever agency gets told, they're able to, because you are a partnership, you're able to pass that intelligence on. You know, it's like someone might say to me, there's a pothole in the road. Well, that's not district level, that's county. But I'll go onto the public portal and do it for them, rather than pass them between pillar and post, because they feel like they've been round the houses, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I said earlier, if there's stuff that you you don't necessarily know who to report to, we're quite happy for you to let us know that, and we can forward it on, because I think I understand the concept of the one-stop shop, and actually when you look at our community safety hub partners, a lot of them are in that room, in that arena, but I think we have to be careful in relation to if you feel that somebody is being abused, or they're not getting the quality of care, that really should go through social services, not through the hub.
Thank you, Tracy. I see Cherie would like to come in here. Cherie.
Yeah, just to reinforce what Tracy said, actually. So at the moment, it doesn't. You're right, Councillor Hensman. Where possible, you pass something through to a public service, and they should be able to refer it through elsewhere. Where possible, we do that. So the information sharing agreement that we've got with the community safety partners means that if something comes through to any of us, so you could choose any route because you're not really quite sure which to go with, then if anything comes through to any of us, then we can share that through if it's appropriate to do so with the right agency if someone's come through to the wrong agency. However, I need to reiterate and make it really clear, if somebody thinks the crime is being committed, depending on the nature and the urgency of that, you should be ringing 999 or using the 101. Online is the preference, but if you can't do online, then you can ring 101. Get that there may be some frustrations with that, but that is absolutely the right thing to be doing if a crime is being committed or you are concerned about a crime that's been committed. So we have got those. We can come in from lots of different places, but we also need to be factoring in what you should be doing in the case of a crime. I think Tracy's already mentioned around social services, and there's such a broad range that it would be difficult for us to be able to put everything into one solution, because that basically is the whole of public service, and you don't know where, what, you've got so many different examples. Where do you start and where do you finish? But hopefully that clarifies for you and gives you some reassurance that we are talking to each other on a regular basis, both on individual instance where it's appropriate in terms of GDPR to do so, but also more generally as well.
That's reassuring. Thank you for that. And obviously I do use the online. That's really good because you can get through and you get a record of it, and then they will say, go speak to so-and-so or whatever. But it's not that I want to fill Tracy's inbox, but it's also helpful to know that you are there. And if we do need a pointer, it's like, not me, try these, then that's great. So thank you both.
Okay, thank you. Last call. Any further questions before we bring this to a close? No, looks like we're done there. So thank you, members, and thank you, Tracy. I'm most grateful for your attendance this evening and for the information you've provided for us. It's going to be very helpful. Members, based on the information gathered this evening, we now need to consider any further lines of inquiry we wish to pursue in order to inform our scrutiny review. Please can you send any such ideas via email directly to the governance team following the meeting. Members, we're asked to make any recommendations to Cabinet based on our review of the annual Community Safety Report. Do any members wish to make any formal recommendations? Please indicate on the chat function. Thank you, members. Can I take it that the report has been noted? I will take silence as assent. Thank you. The report has been noted. Can I once again thank Tracy for her attendance and her contribution this evening and invite her to leave the meeting. You're more than welcome to stay if you wish.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, members.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. I will now proceed with agenda item 6, urgent business. Agenda item 6, urgent business. Members, as we have no urgent business, this item concludes our business for the evening. I will close this meeting of the Partnership Development Scrutiny Committee at 8:06. Thank you all for your attendance and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you, and keep cool.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, members. Before we ask the webcasting officer to terminate the broadcast, can I just please remind members that we'll be retaining performance data to your connection to this meeting this evening. Webcasting officer, please can you terminate the broadcast, please, and confirm.